Wrecking Ball got an actual buff this season, and a secret one that nobody's talking about. If you're struggling on tank against the supports that are getting played a lot nowadays, Wrecking Ball also is a good answer and counter pick against many of them. There's a lot of things that are surprisingly going in his favor, which is impressive considering he's been deemed one of the weakest tanks in 5v5. First of all, let's discuss the secret buff. If you've watched any TikTok videos on counterpicking, you probably assume that Sombra is a great counterpick to Wrecking Ball. But here's the reason why you shouldn't believe everything you hear on the internet. Sombra's rework actually makes her significantly worse against tanks. And it's not even hard to explain the math of why that's the case. The old Sombra would apply a hack debuff that amplified her submachine gun fire so she can lay into a tank for 60 shots of amplified damage. Now, all hack does is reveal you on the map, and in that time you can increase the DPS of Virus, but it is a low damage ability, one that's really only impressive when applied to squishy targets. 100 odd damage on a tank is nothing, especially on a tank that has over 1000 HP when he pops on shields. Granted, hack and Virus are on relatively low cooldowns, but if the enemy Sombra puts it into you as a tank, that's a huge percentage of the enemy's offense going to waste, because it's not until you get a chain of CCs that it really starts to matter on a character like Wrecking Ball. Today's video sponsor is Manscaped, a brand that I've loved as a paying customer for over 4 years now. So you better bet on my trip to BlizzCon, I'm bringing along the Handyman Compact Face Shaver. This thing's the best. I love the design. It's sleek, lightweight, compact. It fits well in your hand and looks really cool. And this bad boy gets a close shave with the unique dual blade system. It's a combo of a foil shaver and a long hair leveler blade that can knock up to 3 days worth of growth. And as always, features the Manscaped skin safe technology that helps reduce nicks and cuts. With its compact design, I keep mine in my backpack on the go or in the car, because when you get over 30, that 5 o'clock shadow starts creeping up around noon. Traveling to BlizzCon, the Handyman's coming along because it has a 60-minute runtime battery, which for me is way more than I need, but even when I do need to charge it, conveniently USB Type-C. Also, the Handyman is waterproof, which makes cleanup super easy. I think whether you want to use it just at home or on the go, the Handyman is going to be right for you. It's just too cool to pass up. Pick yourself up a Handyman at manscaped.com and use our promo code OVERWATCH to get 20% off your very own. That's manscaped.com. Use promo code OVERWATCH and get 20% off your very own Handyman. You may have noticed that Doomfist has benefited from that Sombra rework as well. However, because he's got to use Power Block in order to Empowered Punch, there's a big window of opportunity for Sombra to hack and cancel that ability. In comparison, Ball's defense to pop an adaptive shield in the middle of your team, in a meta where there is actually quite a lot of death balling around the supports, even if you get interrupted, after you've applied adaptive shield, these characters, especially the hit scan support characters, aren't going to be able to headshot you inside of Ball form. And there's other aspects of the Sombra rework too that I wanted to point out. Her movement is much more localized, very predictable, the directions she can go, and Wrecking Ball's recent buff that keeps his spread tighter for longer makes his medium range damage, which already had good range, but now even more accurate, even better at hunting down squishy targets at that range. So with his extreme move speed, verticality, at least in my games when I'm up against a Sombra, I feel like she is the one who's being hunted, because so much of her value is in hacking me out of stealth. All you have to do is tap her with your cannons and she won't get her most effective ability off, which isn't even that good against you anyway. So that is a massive buff, considering a lot of the community rely on that pick in order to stop Ball from being functional. If you're up against way too many stuns, of course, that 1.5 second of lockout that hack does apply is going to stack on the other abilities like Ana Sleep, Brig Bash, these other things that really disrupt your playstyle. Then I would consider swapping for sure, but in general, there's a lot of players that just expect the Sombra player to dominate that matchup alone before they start pulling out the Junker Queen, Brig, Ana May. Those characters I would say I'm afraid of. But a lot of times, players aren't so keen to swap off their picks, and it turns out Ball is quite good against some of the most popular support characters in the game right now. Batiste and Alari are the ones with the highest stats, both of them having deployables, and I see so many Alari players that are used to being able to put their pylon up aggressively and go take so many aim duels that they run over all of the squishies in the game. But what you can do as Wrecking Ball is use your aggression, speed, verticality, and tanking to press in aggressively to clear out those turrets in order to create a window of opportunity for that Alari player to go down. While Alari's potential is really high, it's your ability to outplay her healing pylon first, then kind of easily scoop up the kill on her afterwards that makes me not put her as an S tier pick, at least not unless you're a top 500 player. And other characters that are really popular in ranked, like Mercy, who otherwise can be really difficult for any tank to track down, Wrecking Ball is equipped with the verticality as well as the medium range hit scan damage to track her out of the sky. As a tank, it's often difficult to know what to do against vertical characters, especially flyers with a Mercy attached or a hit scan with a Mercy backing them up. Until they hard counter swap for you, you can go deep into the enemy's backline to crossfire those characters, making use of those cannon buffs that they gave him. Remember, the range on quad cannons is surprisingly good. You're used to other tanks needing to be up close and personal to deal their damage. Wrecking Ball doesn't have to do that, which means you'll be able to do effective damage rolling through the enemy and slamming them, or taking medium range crossfires like a little 76. This game on Busan, the enemy Illari doesn't really know what to do against my playstyle. He tries to swap to Moira and forcing out that escape cooldown and still confirming the kill anyway. Rage swaps back to Illari, but because I play aggressive into their side of the map with what I'm going to call feint engages, I'm able to manipulate the enemy, find out and scout where the turret is, clear it out, and then set up a real engage. That's kind of the trick. Against stuns and hacks, Wrecking Ball can get clowned, expecting to be able to just hard engage every time, but quickly zooming through the enemy to deal damage, see if you can scoop up a player out of position, but mainly read that their key cooldowns they'll need to disable you go down. When Sigma tries to use his rock to clear an angle on the entryway, that's a free path to roll through their entire team. And speaking about tanks now, a lot of the popular tanks do not have mobility. While Orisa is a impenetrable fortress and can stun and CC you, you sort of play just on her backline, avoiding her all the time. And that's going to be your worst matchup for the top tank picks right now. As long as you remember to engage early and in transition before the Sigma gets set up safely. Zarya as well is not a pick I really fear when you use this engagement style of trying to get cooldowns out early. Because another reason why this ball playstyle is emerging as being useful is because previously in the double shield era of Overwatch 1, Wrecking Ball was one of the best counter picks, and it's for this very reason. To be able to manipulate the backline, get cooldowns out, do a partial engage, have the mobility to escape, then go back in, that's the name of the game. Especially cooldowns like Lamp, Bastion Sentry Form. You can scurry in and out of these fights to drain them of their resources, then full commit when they're weak. Another thing I like about the playstyle is that it isn't so dependent on supports. There's a lot of support players you're going to get on your team that are going to be playing Solitaire. Illari playing for her own value and just running a extra DPS pick, mostly. And in this case, a Mercy pocket attached to her. Mercy is not a character that helps basically any tank in the game, which is why you need to find a tank that you can pick that's just going to get value with their own cooldowns and not need any help. Wrecking Ball has always been the best option for that, because otherwise you kind of just got Roadhog, Doomfist, and maybe Junker Queen. All the other tanks really suffer when they're not getting support help, which is another reason why playing Ball this way is one of the best ways I've found to get value on tank when my supports aren't necessarily working with me. Because what's the alternative? You kind of slowly play your position as one of the more anchor tanks whose job it is to just hold a corner and effectively AFK most of the game. That can work on some points, but especially when you need to make space by taking ground from the enemy, you can't just hang back and expect and hope and pray that your squishies are going to eventually hit enough headshots for you to be able to advance forward. Whereas this playstyle, as long as you know your limitations and what your aims are to progressively work out resources over time, you can use your mobility to sculpt the engagement, knock these turret style characters out of the play. Remember, Bastion got a buff on his boop a while back. While it's not effective against tanks anymore, it's very effective against squishies. And a lot of the characters that are getting picked right now don't have great horizontal movement. So knocking a support far back, then turning to fight the tank will split up that lifeline from the tank significantly, forcing the supports to rush in to help them, giving you a chance to focus fire them down. And while in general you might assume that Bastion would be pretty good being able to shred through a Wrecking Ball, he's moving too fast in this playstyle to really be locked down. The only way that he kills you is if you hard engage onto his team badly without your adaptive shield. Otherwise, I feel that's another character that I'm pretty much controlling their movement and placement in the fight. And feinting your engages in this way often will make Bastion use his transform too early, and then the entire character is pointless. For the last section of the video, I want to talk about some of the best maps for Wrecking Ball. That's another strength I think he has, is that they keep adding these really massive maps. This sub map of Samoa Samoa is a huge arena of a point, similar to the one on Oasis. This is important because this disruption playstyle to stage behind them, split up the enemy a little bit, divide and conquer, really reveals its strength against slower characters on these bigger maps. The vast majority of the time, you're looking to make 2v1s on an enemy squishy, making sure that if you're not on a target that you can kill solo, at least drain something out of them while you find a teammate to help. Pushing and pulling the team fight for a long period of time, the enemy can really feel like they can never get a foothold in the team fight, constantly getting pincered and knocked out of cover. The push maps New Queen Street and Esperanza have a combination of long engagement paths that you like anyway, and high ground to contest. Esperanza especially has a lot of good vantage points for you to scout where the enemy's pathing is coming from, so there's always a good opportunity to set up an easy pile driver. Previously, I wouldn't have rated Wrecking Ball as one of the better tanks to receive nano boost, but the spread buffs on the quad cannons really has made the difference. And at the end of the video, I want to talk about some things to look out for, mistakes that you can make with Wrecking Ball if you're only watching the highlights from this video and not realizing some of the decision making that comes through. Keep in mind that while you do want to fight the enemy as early as you feel comfortable, knowing your limits on what you can and cannot tank is incredibly important. The more clumped up the enemy is, the bigger adaptive shields you can get, but also the more abilities they'll have to smack you in the face. So it's a bit of a trade-off, whether you want to try to split them up or properly tank. And I think that's one of the biggest unsung heroes about this character right now, that it's a bit more about disruption and the resource management game than it is committing for kills. Very few tanks feel like they can make space in the game anymore, because you're either just hiding from disable kit or pressing buttons that makes you immune to it, whereas Ball is properly engaging as a tank. What you're trying to balance is going in hard enough so that they'll actually shoot your adaptive shield once you get a big one, but not so hard that you can't escape. A big tip for you, take fights off of the objective whenever possible. The reason for that is you need to have options as Wrecking Ball, and there's far better tanks that can just stand on the objective and cap it. All needs to skirmish around it. So if you get them to use abilities and especially ultimates before they get on the objective, you might be able to dodge fighting right on it, which is what you're weakest at. This game on Esperanza went down to the wire despite me dropping 33-0, but there's still room for me to improve my gameplay, because as a tank, it is your job to look to interrupt opportunities for the enemy to eliminate your team. So missing a roll timing to protect my Ana makes my life harder. Luckily, she gets nano boost off on me so that I can clean up the backline like I've been doing, but it can be easy as Ball to play solitaire yourself, which is why I look to engage with someone else, particularly when they get on a good matchup. Ball's damage only looks good when you combo everything, and even still, you often will need help to secure an limb. And he offers no defense for the team other than CCing them away. So try to place Minefield in the big important fights to zone out an area to make more space for your team, and it's even more money when you can knock key enemies into the mines later on in the fight. In that way, you can almost consider mines as a potential defensive ult to punish things like Soldier Sights, Batiste Window, and other deployables. And if you land them well, there's even a chance they can burst through things like Tree of Life, with the combo of everything hitting at once, your pile driver and the mines exploding. There's not many tank abilities that feel like they've got the potency to do that. With a little bit of finesse though, Minefield can interact with the very deployment-based meta that we have. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave it a like, and don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos come out. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.